So I've gone back and forth on whether I should make this video or not. On one hand, I'm not the kind of person who enjoys creating conflict or raining on people's parade. If people are enjoying the new Dragon Age, more power to them. But after being exposed to this level of writing...
Shit. They're still holding it. Sorry.
What are you doing?
Pulling a barb.
Oh. Okay.
I've just started thinking to myself, don't LGBT people deserve better writing than this? Doesn't everyone deserve better writing than this? I'm beginning to think the real issue many people are starting to have with diversity in gaming isn't that they are racist, sexist, transphobic pieces of shit, although some of them definitely are that. It's that people are just sick of being treated like idiots. I'm old enough to remember a time when gay, black and trans characters existed in several games, and it wasn't reason enough for people to start riots in the streets. And I think what differentiates a game like, say, The Last of Us from something like Dragon Age is intent, and more importantly, better writing and characterization. I remember the first time I played The Last of Us's DLC chapter, Left Behind. I didn't really know what to expect from this piece of content, and I certainly wasn't expecting any gay shenanigans. To those who don't know, Left Behind is a short piece of DLC for the original The Last of Us that retells a certain event in Ellie's life, where she and her friend Riley break into an abandoned shopping mall and start causing all sorts of havoc. It's two kids just doing what kids do, having fun together. The DLC lasts for about 2 hours, and during that time, we really get to see Ellie and Riley's relationship develop. You can tell these two people care deeply for each other, and are basically inseparable. So when that kiss scene happens, it doesn't feel forced or patronizing, it felt earned. It felt like Naughty Dog created that scene because they wanted to, and not because Sony told them they needed an obligatory lesbian scene. I'll refrain from discussing The Last of Us Part 2 in this video, as I have been fairly open about how much I despise that game's story. But what I will say is that I didn't feel like Ellie and Dina's relationship was anywhere near as compelling. They didn't have any real chemistry, and again, it just felt forced. Black characters are also thankfully starting to see more representation in games. But again, the issue I have with this, aside from me being a massive racist, is that none of these characters feel like real people. Take Miles Morales for example. I mean, he's an okay character, he's caring, intelligent, and always tries to make time for those he cares about. But when I try to list any of Miles's flaws, I can't. He's almost too perfect. And as we all know, no person on this planet is without flaws. And certainly no black person. And if I was to make a guess as to why Miles has been written like this, it's because Sony are absolutely terrified of giving any black character a flaw, in case it's taken as an attack on the black community in general. Like, Sony, I understand what you're doing here, but as someone who actually knows black people in real life, trust me, they don't take themselves this seriously. Black people don't want to be represented as perfect and without sin. They just don't want their character to be judged based on the colour of their skin. That's it. If you want to see black representation done well in video games, look no further than the first Walking Dead game, released all the way back in 2012. At the start of the game, our protagonist Lee Everett is literally on his way to prison, before the police carries in Crassus, and he is forced to survive a zombie apocalypse. At the start of the game, you assume Lee is a terrible person. He's a convicted criminal after all. But through his actions during the story, as well as his relationship with a young girl named Clementine, you begin to see what a great man he actually is. And more than likely, you'll be shedding a few tears over this convicted criminal by the end of the game. Telltale never once paints Lee as a perfect person. He is a flawed individual who, through an insane set of circumstances, is given a chance at redemption. And if you really think about it, flawed characters are usually the ones we remember the most. Joel, James Sunderland, Arthur Morgan, Nico Bellic. When terrible characters are given the chance to change for the better, it's far more relatable. Because, as I've already said, most people on this planet have done or said things that they deeply regret. And I think many of us would also like to be better people than we are. A lot of people just don't want to admit that sometimes for real change to happen, we need to push the boundaries of storytelling. To tackle subject matter that many people will find deeply upsetting and possibly even unbearable to watch. This stupid conversation where this character comes out as non-binary to her mother isn't going to change anyone's opinion on transgenderism. You want to experience a story that will really make you empathise with the horrendous shit trans people have to endure on a daily basis? Watch Boys Don't Cry. It's a brutal and uncompromising film that I don't think I could ever watch again. But immediately after viewing the film, all I wanted was for trans people to be left the fuck alone and to be able to live their lives in peace. You want to experience a story that will really make you contemplate the stupidity of racism in America and how all it leads to is so much death and destruction? Watch American History X. It's a film full of brutal violence and hatred shown towards its black characters, and yet it's also probably the most anti-racism film I've ever seen. Hell, even I decided to leave the KKK after watching it. It's funny that people love to portray Japan as a country obsessed with big breasts and anime girls, when they are probably more progressive than most countries in the world. Sure, they don't always add black or gay characters to their games, but when they do, they fucking nail them. I mean, name a more iconic black video game character than Barrett Wallace. You can't. I mean, sure, at the beginning of the game, he may come across as a Mr. T wannabe, but as the story continues, you begin to see just how much humanity this guy has. Cloud and Barrett begin as rivals. They don't immediately like each other, and as a result, their slowly developing friendship feels far more earned than the bullshit Spider-Man tries to pull off, where Peter and Miles are apparently BFFs from minute one and never disagree on anything. Also, how is it that the most mature video game I've played recently is a remake of a 23-year-old Japanese survival horror game? How is it that a game from fucking 2001 tackles themes like bullying, child sexual abuse and depression with more nuance and respect than practically any modern game I can think of? Because AAA studios are fucking terrified to create games like this anymore, in case it negatively affects their profit margins, that's why. But stories like this are exactly what the industry needs right now. Adult stories written by adults for adults. Stories like Silent Hill 2 that take an uncomfortable look at the human condition and force us to face a lot of disturbing real life shit, helps us empathise with others around us. Stories like this bring us closer together, and yet somehow we simply don't get stories like this anymore. Everything in the film, TV and gaming space today is so safe and inoffensive. I really must clarify that I want more diversity in gaming. There is a sizable demographic out there who want all video game protagonists in the future to be cis, heterosexual white males, and for all female characters in said games to only exist as love interests for the protagonist. And I can't tell you how fucking awful a timeline that would be. But what I really want is meaningful diversity in gaming. Gay characters who aren't solely defined by their sexuality, trans characters with interesting backstories, etc. Most people aren't fed up with diversity in gaming because they're awful people. Most of us just think that issues like racism, sexism and transphobia deserve to be tackled with a greater amount of care and finesse. And this shit just isn't it. It's low effort, it's patronising, and it reeks of corporations just forcing this shit into their product to make themselves look better. Trust me, companies like Ubisoft do not give a fuck about any kind of minorities. There were sexual abuse allegations going on in that company for years, and not a fucking thing was done about it. They are only representing minorities in their games because it makes them money, and you deserve better than that. So please start demanding better from movie studios and game publishers. Don't allow them to treat you like you're nothing more than a box to be ticked.